Hi, I'm the fallen angel Christopher Daniels, an inspiration to children everywhere, a national treasure. You're watching Dre Gaming 41? Dre 41 Gaming, my man.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Drake41, aka Mr. 4K, aka Drake41, and today I have an interview with Spot Callerz game creator Shannon Williams. Now, within this interview is just a little bit of background of how he got into wrestling, his favorite wrestling games, and what he really wants to bring to the table with Spot Callerz Wrestling game. Now, this game is going to be really different from other wrestling games that you see out on the market, but it's a different aspect, a different take on wrestling games with a bunch of creative aspects in it. And in this interview, it's really in depth, it's really cool. Link in the description below for all his links to follow him and just keep yourself updated with everything that he's doing. So yeah, really cool interview. Definitely watch the whole interview to get a full scope of what he plans on doing and his love for wrestling games. Other than that, like, subscribe, comment, and catch you guys on the next video.
With what made you really want to get into making a wrestling game? Like, what was the wrestling games that you played growing up and really got you into the mindset of, taking from those aspects of the wrestling games you grew up playing to create the game that you're creating currently?
Okay, so this is gonna be a lot because what kind of got me started, I used to play SmackDown Shut Your Mouth when I was a little kid. That was the first wrestling game in my home. I didn't own it, but I just remember I was playing the game before I even started watching wrestling, and I used to always play as Christian because he used to come out on the game with the sparks coming down, and I always thought that was cool. So I would always play as Christian, and then I like Booker T because he had huge eyes in the game. So stuff like that, that those are my first memories of wrestling games. But after that, my brother, he was always the big wrestling fan, so he would watch wrestling all the time. He had the action figures, and I was into basketball, so it took me like a good 2 or 3 years to actually get into it. And I started watching wrestling during the Ruthless Aggression. So Batista had just become the world champion. He was feuding with JBL, and that's when I fell in love with it. I remember the exact moment. It was Batista coming out. They were doing the hyper promo, and they showed when he got drafted to SmackDown from Raw, and he came out and he had the pyro and all the the machine gun, and that was crazy to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta watch it. So that's what really got me watching it. And after that, I purchased WrestleMania 21, like a couple months after that came out. Now to me, when I had the game, I loved it. I was a kid. I'm like, oh man, this is great. I got all the wrestlers. But the one thing that I didn't understand was none of the wrestling games had Batista's fireworks. I didn't understand game development at that time. So I always thought, well, Batista just did it last week, so it should be in the game. But Batista hadn't done. It had been like 8 months since the game had started production, so he missed that. And they didn't have it correct in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. They didn't have it in Day of Reckoning 2. So all of these thoughts used to always be in my head, and I would always go into the creation modes and try to make it right. So I would go and try to create a Batista that had the fireworks, and they never nailed his entrance ever, except for one game, which was Day of Reckoning 2. That was the closest game they ever got, to the from coming out, the hype package, the pyro, everything. They just didn't have the pyro. So Day of Reckoning 2 was my favorite game because of that. Like, that was my favorite wrestling game of all time.
Wow. So you never played like No Mercy or WrestleMania 2000?
No, not as a kid. I have them now, but I have No Mercy now in WCW Nitro. But I didn't have those as a kid. You got to think I was like 10 or 11 in 2004, 2005. Yeah, so the game consoles when I was growing up, I grew up on the end of the Super Nintendo and Xbox, and then right after Xbox, I had a PSP, and then a 360, and then the Xbox One. So.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, hey, damn, man.
So I'm going back in time.
Yeah, no, definitely. But you know what? Like, I'll go back too. Like, I remember playing WWF Warzone on PlayStation 1. So I'm a little bit older than you. So it's like I played those games back in the late 90s. Man, those games were trash. Like, you had to do like button inputs to do moves. It was like, forward, down, up, square, and X at the same time to do a finisher. Like, it was terrible. It was. So you definitely grew up in a better time than I did when it comes to wrestling games, because I am telling you, the ones from before 2000, they were trash. Like, they weren't that good. But so now, since you're playing the wrestling games, you started getting into like watching wrestling on TV with that, then, right?
Yep. So that's when I started. And I hold on. Actually, I'll be right back. I got some. Hold on.
All right.
So this was the first wrestling magazine I ever owned.
Oh wow!
So you can see this is Samoa Joe in his prime. This isn't the exact one. I had to repurchase it, but this was Samoa Joe in his prime. So I fell in love with WWE first, and then I made a mistake. My mom actually was flipping through the channels one day. It was like a day WWE didn't come on, so I was just bored watching cartoons, and she was like, "Hey, wrestling is on Spike, I think it was at the time." And then I cut the TV on, and I see Christian, the Dudley Boys, Sting. I'm like, Rhino. I'm like, what is this? So yeah, my love for wrestling started there with WWE, and then as soon as I saw TNA, that was my new favorite brand to watch. It was TNA.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you play that TNA game that came out?
Yes, and I'm probably one of the only people who loved that game. I loved every inch about the game. Except for the creation mode. I thought the creation mode sucked. And that's when I started getting into it in 2009 when SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 was out. But I loved the game so much that I started recreating the characters from TNA Impact with the exact attires in SmackDown vs. Raw 2009. I started with the Motor City Machine Guns. But that was the game. Wow. That was the game for me.
Damn, man, that's what's up. And you know what? I remember playing that game too. And the one thing that I took away from it was the reversals, and it was so much action. It was back-to-back reversals, and originally I think they were saying something where they wanted it to be like No Mercy, but I guess it didn't come out that way. But it was still overall a great game. Roster was a little shallow, and the creation suite wasn't great, but I think it was definitely a good game, and I wish TNA was more, I guess, I mean, not to say that it's not popular, but I wish it was more popular to where it can invoke a reason to, have a video game come out. So I definitely feel you on that. I don't think it was one of the best wrestling games, but it was definitely up there. Like, that game was good enough for me to where I purchased Lucha Libre. And that game, that game was difficult. That game was very difficult to play.
So I actually just heard about the Lucha Libre, the AAA game.
Yeah.
I just heard about that. I was watching one of the New Legacy streams and I saw him playing. I'm like, how did I not know about this game as a kid? Like,
oh man, yeah. Listen, like just being a wrestling fan, man, you just learn about stuff like this. Like even they got this old school game where I actually live streamed it a while ago. It's called Power Move Pro Wrestling. It was actually the first 3D wrestling game on the PlayStation. And granted, it's basic. Like it's a very basic game. But the introductions to that game are by far the best I have ever heard in any wrestling game. Like it's called Power Move Pro Wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah, it's for PlayStation 1. It's like I said, the gameplay isn't great. It's very basic, but the introductions to that game are the funniest that I have ever heard. Definitely a game worth getting. But let's get into just the game that you're creating at this point in time. Where did you come up with the name?
The name. So, back in 2016 when I originally, or 2015, it was either 2015 or 2016, when I originally wanted to make my own wrestling game. The Young Bucks were one of the hottest things in, the universe as far as wrestling was concerned. And one of the terms I was always dubbed to them was Spot Monkeys. And people would always, I don't know if you remember, but that was a term being thrown around a lot for the indies. And I wanted to make a game based on independent wrestling, like, really just showcasing what it's like to be an independent wrestler. And I wanted to do a positive twist on it. So instead of it being Spot Monkeys or something like that, I was like, well, when you're doing a wrestling move, it's called a spot. And when you're out there calling moves on the fly, you're calling spots. So how about Spot Callerz? And I just threw the Z on there because why not? But that's really where the name came from, man. Ever since then, I stuck with it. You know, I originally had, it was named, I had a couple. I had Indie Scene Wrestling, which is what it went by for the longest, and it was the most unoriginal name. I told Truth Martini from Ring of Honor. I used to go up to the House of Truth all the time and, you know, really just learn. And he was like, well, what's the name of the game? And I was like, Indie Scene Wrestling. And he kept trying to say it, and he was like, you know, that, can you come up with a different name for it? And at that time, I'm like, well, it's indie, you know, it's the indie scene and it's wrestling, but whatever. I had 1,000 Words Wrestling. That was something that I came up with a few months ago, because they have a term, a picture is worth 1,000 words or something like that. A picture says 1,000 words. And with the direction of the game originally, I was going to go more like just pictures of wrestling. And I was thinking of that. And then, you know, just anything with indie. But Spot Callerz is the one where I instantly just think, yeah, that's the name of the game. So
that's what's up. Now, with also, you know, developing the name, you know, taking your time with that, was there a time where you had an original idea for the game and then it over time evolved into something else?
Yeah, 4 or 5 times this game has evolved, actually. So a little bit before I got into the game itself and kind of what started it, Cause.ws was a website I was on all the time when I was, you know, from 12 years old to probably about 16, 17. And I would just sit up making creations, and I was always going for ruthless aggression, like my childhood, remaking that. And then one summer, I was just sitting up, and I'm like, man, I would love to make a TNA Impact game. I think somebody made a video, Element Games, that's who it was. They made a video of a concept of a TNA game, like the UI, and I was like, man, that would be something dope. And I made a TNA save in WWE 13 or 14, and it was all TNA, all the 2005 to 2006 wrestlers, arenas, themes, everything. I went all out. And then my brother, he told me, he was like, man, one day you're going to mess around and make your own wrestling game. And from that, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about game development. So I had to teach myself everything at home from scratch. So I spent an entire summer learning how to design characters, learning how to design arenas and stuff like that. And I made a fighting game in Detroit, it was Detroit Rappers. And that took majority of my time, plus me working full time and being in school. So the original concept for this wrestling game, it took me like a year and a half to even start working on, which was Indie Scene Wrestling. And that was, it was my love letter to wrestling, of course. I still have the design document, but it was based on Day of Reckoning 2. Day of Reckoning 2 was the inspiration for a lot of it. One of the biggest things I loved was they have, if you're in a submission, it's 4 different things you can do with a submission, like a rest hold, taunt, different things like that. And I took that same layout and used W2K15 images and placed them over as my concept art. And that was what I was trying to do. But since I didn't really know anything about programming, anything like that, I just wasted all of my money paying other people to come try to do stuff, and then it would come out how I didn't like it. And I eventually learned, like, if I really want to make it, I have to make it myself. So it started off like a traditional wrestling game. I did the mocap with the Young Bucks for that original version, and that was, I really thought that's where it was going. I still got all of the files and everything. Fast forward, I decided, well, maybe I shouldn't go that route. Maybe I should try something different, something turn-based, more like a board game style approach to wrestling. And that was the original concept for Spot Callerz, which it was a lot different, and it was inside of Unity. And I switched engines and everything to Unreal.
Wow.
And then I had the version which was an action figure version, which I still also have that, which I actually 3D modeled action figures, like wrestling figures, and made it where you can go in and set the frames, like animate the key frames and then play them through so you can do stop motion with it. And then all of those things kind of merged together to make what Spot Callerz is now. So.
Wow, damn, that's a lot of steps, man, getting to the point where you're at now. Now, with this game, I mean, this is a big game to be doing on your own, you know, or basically on your own. So how much time do you put forth in a week to make this game?
How much time we put in? Oh, man, I'm asking my wife. She's actually sitting here laughing because I wake up in the morning, you know, clean myself up, come in the office and get to work. And I probably have like 2 or 3 hours of downtime during the day where I just, you know, take a break, get something to drink, get something to eat. and then I'm right back at it until like 11 or 12. So right now, like all day long until I just moved to Florida. So with me moving from Michigan to Florida, I'm still kind of getting settled in. Still have some time to really hone in on finishing this game. So yeah, a lot of time.
Damn, but you know what? That's definitely good because I mean, even if it's a small time, as long as you put that dedication in, you're definitely going to polish it, make sure it's good. So that's definitely a good thing. Definitely putting time into it and making sure that it's a quality product. Now with this, let's talk more in depth about the game. Now, what features do you want to bring into the game that you don't currently see in wrestling games currently?
So, brand new idea I came up with this morning actually, and I already have like 60% of it implemented. Is and you can tell me if it exists or not, but it's
Okay.
a match constructor where you literally actually construct a match from bell to bell. You go in, you select the wrestlers, you select each move that you want them to perform. If a submission or pinfall will be made there, and just watch the match play through. So this is something that I'm considering making a standalone feature, but also it'll be part of the promotion mode, which is like my version of a GM mode inside of the game, where you run your own independent promotion. So like that's one feature that I can definitely say is in the game that I haven't personally seen yet.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. I mean, as opposed to just it being like a simulation, but you don't, control exactly what happens in the match. So that's definitely a cool feature because a lot of people who play Fire Pro Wrestling, 90% of people don't play it; they just watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's definitely a cool feature to have. Especially if you want to, have them book a match and say, okay, this is exactly how I want to do it, or if they're gonna, have a YouTube channel and say, okay, I'm gonna book the match like this and let people see how entertaining it's going to be. So that's definitely a cool feature and definitely something that you should add to the game. Now, not trying to, spoil too much of the game before it comes out or before you, put a preview out of it. How many characters do you plan on putting in this game?
So we actually spoke before about using some of your community's original characters. So I'm guessing anywhere between 20 to 30 people will probably be a good start. The thing about it is the game really I really want to focus on the worldwide appeal of a professional wrestler. So for instance, if you just started the game up, just to show you how the game will progress, you would start in the training school where you may have like 2 or 3 moves in your arsenal, like a hip toss, a sleeper or something like that, and a basic chop and a punch. And each move, each match, that's all you have until you go back to the training school and learn new moves, or you go to a seminar. So this is another thing that I think my game might be originally the only game to have is seminars. It's like this is a big thing for independent wrestlers when they're trying to come up. They can actually go and learn from other independent wrestlers or other professional wrestlers or legends about what it's like to be in the business. Like, what is it actually like to be a wrestler, like the different things that you need to learn, etiquette backstage, all of those different things. So I think having 20 to 30 people would be a good start because I can space it out where I have like maybe 5 or 6 main people for each region. And then from there, if I wind up talking, I'm just going to throw a company out there like an Impact Wrestling. Let's say if they wanted to be part of it eventually, I could work something out where I can bring their wrestlers in and have a territory which is just Impact Wrestling. People could go there and face Impact Wrestling stars and boost their own popularity up. So, 20 to 30 people I think would be a good start. But the creation mode will be so vast, I don't think people will have any problems with any size the roster is. I think they'll be able to go in and say, man, I'm making Samoa Joe or Tommaso Ciampa or Doink the Clown and be happy,
Definitely. Now, okay. So once again, we're not going to go into any spoilers or getting, too far into the game before release or before you really show everything that you do bring to the table with the game. But as far as the creation suite goes, is there going to be a limitation on how many characters you can create in the game?
No. For this, let me explain something real quick. So we started as creators. That's all I did on the game. Create. So Creation Suite has been one of my primary focuses. Like, I really wanted to make this suite amazing. Now, with the game starting on Steam, I'm not putting a limit on it because you basically should be able to save as much as your hardware or I messed that word up. Hardware would allow you to. But when I tried to port it to Xbox, PS4, Nintendo Switch, I'm not 100% sure how that storage would fluctuate. Like, I'm not sure if there is a cap on how much space they are allowed to use, and that would be the only determining factor on such thing. Now, what I do have in mind, which could work, if the game is able to generate enough finances, like enough money to sustain a database, I will be able to make it where all of your creations are just housed in the cloud somewhere. And maybe that is where, you know, you're having unlimited space for your wrestlers, and you just have to pay a subscription for it or something like that. But I definitely think for Steam, we won't have any storage limits. It's just based on your computer.
Okay, no, that's definitely a good thing, because a lot of people, you know, like we spoke before, are in the community where they just create. So, you know, no caps on creation is definitely a good thing, and definitely a thumbs up, and I'm pretty sure the community would love that. Now, with the game also, move sets, the big part of the game. How many moves do you plan on implementing into the game when you first launch it, or a roundabout number, not an exact?
Okay. So, this is kind of touchy because I actually have to redo all of the moves that I did originally, because I swapped the models out and I'm using completely different rigs and everything. I had close to 30 moves already done. So now I'm probably closer to 10 moves that are done. But I want to have at least 30 to 35 when the game releases. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but this is the thing. I actually have a move creator system that I built for the game. So I'm either thinking I can build that and actually package it up and release it as a standalone so the community can build new moves, or, you know, I can make it something where I just have access to it, and when people build new moves, I mean, not I only have access to it, but I only have access to push the moves, so that when people build moves, they send them to me, and then I push an update of like 10 or 15 moves a week, you know. So it's definitely something that I want to put the emphasis on the moves, but I know the moves are something that can be modular. Like, we can just keep adding those in at any point in time. So, you know, when the game releases, I'll have enough for you to at least have like five wrestlers with completely unique movesets, but then everything added from then will be after the game has been released.
Okay, so now, you know, we spoke about the moves, we spoke about the character creation suite. Now, within the game itself, you have different modes that you plan on, you know, adding to the game. What in the game modes itself, like, let's say, walk me through a match and how we would play it out.
Okay, so if we were just in a match, let's say it's just a standard match with pinfall and submission on, I'm trying to figure out exactly what that first part would be like who actually gets to go first. That's something that is very important in turn-based games. Like, you have to get that right. And what I'm thinking is it's something that has to do with your character story before you go into a match. So before you go into a match, you can actually choose the story for the character or the story for the match. If it's like an underdog, or if you know, just a heel destroying the face. And based on your decision, it'll craft whoever should get the advantage, and it'll be like a randomized thing, which is 70% biased towards, you know, whatever the criteria was. So let's just say you got the move first, so you get to move first. Now, when we go into just a standard match, we will both start at tier 1. So it's 3 tiers right now. I can always add more, but I think 3 is a great limit, and 4 will probably be for finishers. But if we are just starting a match and you get the first one, you can do any of the chain grappling moves, like if that's your character style. So you have go behind, I forgot the other ones, but like a standard lockup, different things like that, where you can start the match. And we just go back and forth trying to figure out who's going to get to tier 2 first, and then they'll have the most momentum, and they can start performing those more difficult moves that, you know, require more energy. So the name of the game is to keep an eye on your energy, because you don't want to lose all your energy, because then you can't reverse. You just, you know, sitting there. So you want to conserve your energy, but at the same time, you want to be consistently building momentum and also watching the match trajectory. So as you're doing the moves, you don't want to just start with a huge move that gives you the most momentum, because the momentum is all percentage based. So since the momentum is percentage based, if you were to use that big move up front, now if you try to use it later on, it won't deal the same damage.
Okay.
And I'm explaining a lot of systems, so it's kind of complicated how they knit together. But the way the momentum works, momentum is the most important thing to me in the game. But the way the momentum works, the reason why you wouldn't be able to use it to the same impact earlier in the match and later in the match is because each time you use a move, your level of impact goes down. So the percentage that you would get for using that move actually goes down like 20%. I'm adjusting the numbers as I go, but 20% each time you use it. So it's trying to train you. Hey, you don't want to just use all your big moves up front. Save those for later, and then you can move on to the next tier because the tiers are based on the momentum. And yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, but you would do your move. We would go and see who gets to tier 2, then tier 3, and then the finish. And with the finish, I actually introduced a completely new system, which is a 3-card Monty. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I heard it again.
Yeah, so that's a system that I came up with randomly, and I was like, I'm gonna try it, and I actually like how it works because it's not about chance really. It's about concentration. But you have a card in the middle. That's your main card, and you have 2 other cards, and they are all identical. The card in the middle blinks a little bit, and then it says start, and then it goes and shuffles them up. And then if you get it wrong, you get a pin count. So if I'm getting pinned and you are pinning me, and I see the 3 cards and I choose the wrong one, it would say 1. And then if I do it again and I get it wrong again, it's 2. And then the last one is 3, and then game over. But if I'm able to choose the right card, I kick out, and then I get momentum, and it's just an interesting thing that I never really thought about. But the difficulty in that comes with I'm trying to figure out if I want it to really be just all energy based, or if I want it to be energy based plus momentum based. To really complicate it, but it would speed up. So the cards will speed up how they shuffle more times, and then that'll make it harder for you to kick out. So after that. That would be the match, and just figure out what I want to do for the end screen. I do have a match rating system. Mine's
okay.
a lot.
I was gonna ask you about that too.
Yeah. So I have the traditional 5-star, but I actually have a hidden 2 stars, or just a hidden 1 star. I forgot now. I think it's a hidden 1 star, where you can have a 6-star match. Now the way this works is not like a traditional game where you see the stars during the match. You actually don't know how you're doing until the end of the match, and then it's like, hey, you got 4 stars, 5 stars, and etc. But the 6 stars is extremely rare because, and this is something I was about to get into when I was talking about how the match starts in the traditional. We start both at tier 1. If you are in like indie mode or something where you have a feud, you actually skip a tier when you start the match if you have enough heat. So you will be able to jump past the the basic grapples and jump right to more, higher impact moves going right at each other, and the crowd meter would already be hyped. So you would have to have all of these different things in play for you to be able to reach a 6-star match. You wouldn't just get it off your first, time locking up.
So it's safe to say that with this game itself, it's kind of teaching you the story aspect of professional wrestling.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the etiquette. So I wanted to make a game where an independent wrestler or an aspiring professional wrestler could pick the game up and actually learn from it. So that's where my background was when I was in my old career. I was an instructional designer where I would take content and teach with different methods, teach with video games. So if I can take the same elements of the things that I've learned, just being around people in the business, being backstage, learning different things from the schools, and implement it into the game, and then people could actually, wrestlers can learn different things. I think that'd be cool. Things like money management, like you have to pay for gas. You can't just snap your fingers and go to a different town. You got to pay for gas, food, a membership at the gym if you want to work out. Like all of these different things need to come and play, and they will in my indie mode. So.
Okay, now with the game being, now is it just based in the independent scene, or is it also where you can make it to the big stage, like a WWE or a AEW?
Yep. So you can make it to the big. So I can go into this mode actually because it's not really a secret. I put it on the website, but the career mode /GM mode is called my indie mode. where you actually start from scratch, like I was talking about starting from school, and you get to go around the world. Now, with this, you get popularity, you get money, and you get to do different things with the money, like invest. So you can invest in a podcast. You can invest in, if it's a clothing line, they want you to take part. One of the other things that you can do is actually create your own promotion from that money. So you will be able to use your popularity and your brand to start your own promotion, or if that's not what you want to do, you can just keep going on the indie scene or go to one of those higher brands. And I just call them higher brands. I don't have any names, not tied to WWE, AEW, anything like that. So you can go to one of those higher brands, or you can go to that Japanese brand, across the water that's kicking butt, and do that for the rest of your career. So definitely those are parts of it.
Okay, so it sounds like you really want to take this game like really deep into like just the world of professional wrestling, and not just one company, but just around the world. Now, with this also, is there a way where you might get injured and have to take time off?
Yeah, so that's something that I've thought about. I haven't fully detailed it, but the injury aspect, not just injuring yourself, but also injuring an opponent, which would get you heat. So in the game, there are two different types of heat, and I actually have the variables and everything set up for it. I just want to get everything for the creation suite fleshed out so I can start, adding onto it. But you can actually injure an opponent, and if you do, you get heat and you lose respect, and then it's harder for you to get booked, and you start losing money. Different things like that will all take effect. But injuring yourself is something that I definitely want to happen. And the sweet thing is, with the way I'm animating the moves, I can actually make some grotesque looking injuries, some snapped fingers or something crazy like that, and let that play into, the story. But I just want to, I think I'm going to make it an option where you can cut it on or off, because I would hate for somebody to, get this far and then they get injured and then, they lose everything they've been building towards. So I think I'll add that as an optional thing.
Yeah. No, and I get that too, because the point of the game is to have fun. But it would be great, like to start a career. You're like, I'm doing great. I'm saving so much money. Broke Mac, can't play anymore. Oh, I gotta start over.
Yeah, and maybe that's something I have to do is add insurance. Like I was really thinking, I'm like, what about a credit score? Like I'm not going that deep, but I was really thinking like stuff like that. You as a real person have to think about. Like this is a professional wrestling game RPG. That's really what this is. It's a role playing game. So sorry, I was trying to put it in the middle. It's an RPG, so I really want people to think about this as a professional wrestler. Like when you're going in, it's like, hey, do I want to focus on getting new gear, or should I invest in ordering some more merch so I can sell it at the show? Like these are different things that I really wanted to take into account.
Okay, no, then that's definitely a good thing. Now, the big question is, when do you plan on releasing this?
Yes, so I've been saying since I started back on this project in July that I want to have something on December. What? I'm not sure. It's probably not gonna be the whole game. I'm sure it's not gonna be the whole game, but at least a demo, maybe a creation mode or two where you can make moves or something. But I want to have something on December. Excuse me, I got hiccups. When I talk too fast, I get hiccups. That's my thing. But yeah, I want to have something. Just not 100% sure what it'll be. Like as I continue to work, I'm sure an idea will pop. Maybe it's that the match creator where I
that actually help.
I give people like a bunch of moves and they can make their own matches, and we can start generating buzz for the community to get hyped for this game. And then maybe in January or February I'll have enough, or maybe I'll go early access. I've also been thinking about that. I'm already approved to get it out on Steam. So maybe, I release a demo in December as an early access thing, and then use those funds to continue building the game out, and then, do a full release in Q1 of next year, March or February or something. So, yeah, it's coming soon, though. I'm working my butt off trying to get something out there, because I already know if I get too busy, if I find a job that takes up too much of my time, it'll be hard for me to really dedicate as much time as I want to on here. So I've been trying to get the necessary features out for people to go ahead and start playing it and have the game out in the open.
I hear that, and that's definitely a good thing, man. Like to have the community see it, even if it's it's early form, but just to give you feedback and what you're doing good, what you need to change, what you need to update, things like that. So that's always something good to do, especially when it's a game for the people. You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely a good thing. So with that being said, I don't want to keep you on too long. It's getting kind of late here on our end. We're both East Coast, so it's 8 p.m. on our ends. One last question is, what is your goal with this game?
That's a great question. This entire time I've been saying this game is my love letter to independent professional wrestling. And if I'm being completely honest, I know people always say they don't do things for the money and this and that. I'm doing this for my love of wrestling and the money. Like I'm not gonna hold you up.
I hear that.
I'm doing it like you. Time is money nowadays. So my number one goal is to make a product that people enjoy enough for them to be willing to pay for it. If I can make a game that I have fun playing with and you have fun playing with, and you're like, all right, let's pay $15-20 for it. I think I've succeeded, and then making that game something that I can focus on full time, because it started as a hobby. I love just making characters, and me being able to make a complete wrestling game from scratch with features that I love and I want to have in a wrestling game. I think that's a dream come true as a dream job. So that's something that I would definitely be happy to do 24/7.
Yeah, definitely, man. And like I said, the community needs it, especially with what we have nowadays. We can definitely use a wrestling game that works.
Yeah, I can understand it.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate this time. Your time for this interview. Definitely appreciate that. Where can people find you on social media?
Yes. So, can I drop my links in the YouTube video? Can I give you the links?
Yeah, I can put it right across the bottom of the screen and the link in the description. All that.
Because most of my social media, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and just got on TikTok. got on TikTok now.
Okay.
Discord and Patreon, all at Spot Callerz. So if you just type in Spot Callerz with a Z, you should see all of my social media accounts. I know Instagram might be Spot Callerz Game, because I think Spot Callerz was taken, but yeah, that's how you'll find it for the most part.
All right, yeah, and that will be in the link in the description below, guys. If you want to, definitely follow him. He's a creator. He's part of the community. He's a wrestling fan like we all are. If you're watching this video, you need to follow him and let him know. Keep it up. Keep it going. The game is called Spot Callerz. As you can see on this shirt, you got to start selling that shirt for real.
I know. I'm gonna get it on the website. I was about to say.
And he got the tags on the back.
I forgot
right
about
there.
that.
You got the tags on the back.
Another
you got
thing,
the merch already set.
Already, and I made the merch. Like I've been trying to really bust my butt, man. If you watch NXT this week, myself and my wife will be there, hopefully front row, and you should look for this shirt because I wear it at every NXT taping. So
there you go.
If you see me, just tweet me and say, "Hey, we saw you. We want to play the game," and I'll definitely give you a follow back.
Hey, listen, I'm much appreciated for this interview, man. I thank you very much. And, definitely keep us in tune. Updated content. Also, follow this guy. He also streams on Twitch as well.
Yes.
So definitely watch it. He definitely gives you guys full details on what he's doing.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right.